and her dad was taken from her. Turns out he was murdered by this crazy man.
And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl.
You see?
Everything happens for a reason.
What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel, welcome to another breakdown of The Last of Us. We are now at episode 8, the penultimate episode in this series. It's titled When We Are in Need. It features a big section of the game where Joel's injured, Ellie's trying to take care of him. It's the first time in the game that you actually play as Ellie, and it's where you come across the character David, who's a really big presence in the game. This episode, it's absolutely excellent. It rips straight out of the source material. It looks like the game from start to finish. There's a huge amount of parallels in this compared to a lot of the other episodes, so let's get into it. So this episode starts out and you can see that it's based in a resort called Silver Lake, which is exactly the same as the game. It looks beautiful in the show, and this were all filmed up in Alberta, Canada in February, and it's classed as a cold episode, as Craig Mazin says, and it really comes through. The weather you see in this is exactly what it were when they were filming. It introduces David into the scene straight away. I'm really hoping that they pulled this character David off really well, because there's certain characters in the game, if it's not cast right, it's going to come across really poorly. But they cast this guy Scott Shepherd to play David. I think he plays an excellent part in this. I'm really glad on the casting choice for this one. Scott Shepherd is another familiar face. Some of you might recognise him. He were in a big movie with Tom Hanks called Bridge of Spies. You might have seen that one. But yeah, a great actor. I think he pulls David off really well. And in this first scene, David opens up and he's quoting from the Bible, like a Revelations quote about heaven and the first earth, and it's gone away and it's restarting. It's kind of just a reflection the world living in today. And you know, a lot of people in those kind of desperate times, the turn to faith. David himself explains that to Ellie later on in the show, that he was previously a teacher and he became a preacher and found faith after the world fell apart.
From teacher to preacher, because what, it fucking rhymes?
He's a big presence in the game. He's obviously a big presence in this episode. It comes across with this very sinister side straight from the get-go.
My name's David. This is my friend James.
Name's David. This here's my friend James.
And again, in The Last of Us world, it's just another group that are trying to survive in these desperate times. That little nod that you see him give to the character James while the girl's talking about wanting to bury her father.
When can we bury him?
The ground is too cold to dig.
As a fan of the game, straight away you know he's giving that nod to James, because they're not burying a father at all, because they're all eating him basically. They've had to turn to cannibalism in a desperate struggle to stay alive. Which brings us on to Troy Baker, everybody. You know, big fans of the game. Really happy to see Troy Baker in this show. Troy Baker is actually the voice actor of Joel in the games. You know, he's quite famous in the video gaming world. And to see him get a role in the show as James, which James is David's like right-hand man in the game, and he plays a fantastic part. I thought, you know, when I saw the trailers originally, I thought maybe Troy Baker, it'd just be kind of a small role, you know, a little bit of dialogue, but he actually is quite a big presence in the show. He's got a lot of dialogue. He plays a much bigger part as James in the show than you actually see in the game, to be fair. So big shout out to Troy Baker, really. These people are actually saying that, you know, they're waking up, they're pinching themselves, that they're featuring in the show from all those years ago when they started out, like as Joel and Ellie. Like I said before, you'll see Ellie's voice actress, Ashley Johnson, in the final episode next week. Really excited to see that. They've both been like iconic with these roles as Joel and Ellie throughout the years in the Last of Us story. So brilliant to see. It's quite cool that he's got this part, definitely. We cut to this scene here where Ellie's looking after Joel, you know, like desperate times, trying to give him some water. Now in the game, obviously, like I explained in the last video, the DLC from Left Behind, which was the last episode, now you didn't play that until after the original game story was released. So when you play the game, straight from Joel getting injured, it cuts to the scene where Ellie is hunting, and it's the first time in the game itself that you play from Ellie's point of view. But as a first-time gamer, you don't know at that point if Joel's actually still alive, and you don't see Ellie looking after Joel like this until you've had the first encounter with David and you go back with the medicine. Until she asks for the medicine from David, that's when you're like, oh, okay, Joel's okay. And then the first glimpses you see of him injured in the basement of the house is when she actually goes back from that first encounter with David. So it just shows you Ellie's a little bit desperate at this point, and just a little touch what they've changed in the game. Ellie tries to go out hunting, she's got the rifle. In the game she's using a bow and arrow. You know, you've got quite an arsenal of weapons in the game as you collect as you go forward, and one of them's always a bow and arrow. Of course, Ellie running around with a bow and arrow in the TV show, it's probably not going to come across that realistic, so it does make sense that they've given her the rifle. When they were actually shooting the show, Bella Ramsey, she's only really small, Bella Ramsey, and the rifle's quite heavy, and she were actually struggling to hold it during all these scenes where they were doing shot after shot, and she had a bit of a struggle with it, and she said herself she would wake up in the morning, all the muscles were aching and everything. But if you look at these scenes, you can see the rifle's huge compared to her. So in this scene now, she sees the white rabbit. That the point that I've just made, where you go straight to Ellie from seeing Joel get injured, it starts with this rabbit. You see it in a scene, and Ellie shoots it with the bow and arrow for food. In the TV show, the rabbit's got away, so it's just kind of a little funny reference to the game itself. Ellie falls over, the rabbit runs away, and that's that. And that's when she claps eyes on the deer, which is exactly just like the game. And you just have to you shoot the deer, and it does get injured, and then you have to find it. And that's, of course, when you come across James and David. And again, the game itself, it's what you call a linear game. It's like a linear storyline. There's like one path to take. It's not an open world game. Kind of always looking at it from Joel's perspective. This is the first time in the game you see it from Ellie's perspective. But you're always essentially looking at it from their point of view. So it's kind of nice that you're getting to see the scenes with David from those guys' point of view. You can't really do that in the game because you're never going to play as those characters. So you see the first scenes with David, and then as Ellie's hunting for the deer, these scenes are ripped straight from the game. The dialogue when she first bumps into David and James, she asks for the medicine. But one of my favourite parts of this, I mentioned this in the actual trailer breakdown I did months ago, and she comes across David and James, and she calls James Buddy Boy, and you're going to get one straight between the eyes. Same for Buddy Boy over there. The same dialogue, they've used it in the show. It's kind of cool.
Any sudden moves and I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy over there.
Any sudden moves, I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy.
And of course, this is where you start seeing the manipulative side of David. You know, he sits down with Ellie. The big difference now in the game to the TV show here is when you first meet David and you start the fight and you start talking, you get overrun with infected, and you have to stand your ground with David in this like old abandoned sawmill from the cabin that you're talking in, and you have to defend yourself against all this infected. Now, on the hardest level of the game, this is one of the hardest parts, the one section on what you call grounded mode in the game that's the hardest mode that I cannot do. But they've just completely took all that out of the TV show. Now, I understand that they're doing that because it's not paying that much reference to the story, it's just creating more gameplay. But at the same time, a lot of fans are saying this show, it's really lacking scenes with the infected. I kind of agree with that to a certain extent, and I think in areas like this, to create a bit more of a bonding moment with Ellie and David, they could have at least had maybe a little bit of a scene with the infected. It's just a little small nitpick for me because I knew they were going to take a lot of this away for the show. It does make sense. Maybe not to the extent that they have done, but you know, it is what it is. So at this point, yeah, David sends James away to get some medicine. He asks Ellie to take shelter, stay out of the cold and start a fire. And all this stuff's ripped straight out of the game. It's some of my favourite parallels that I'll show on screen as we go. At this point, Ellie's just dismissing everything he says, and it gets around as she cracks a smile, and you can tell that he's manipulating her a little bit. And again, this is all after you have a big infected fight in the game, and then it comes out with that line where he sent the guys to a nearby town, and only 3 of them came back, and they were killed by a crazy man.
Now, you see, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
sent a group of men out to a nearby town to...
And only 3 of them came back. And the one that didn't was a father. He had a daughter just like you.
He said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man.
And get this. That crazy man was traveling with a little girl. You see?
Everything happens for a reason.
And obviously when he's referring to that crazy man, he's talking about Joel, and that line where he says, and get this, he will be a little girl. Rings alarm bell straight away for Ellie. That's when James shows back up, and yeah, she takes the medicine in the form of some penicillin, fungal, you know, penicillin. And yeah, she goes back to Joel, exactly the same as the game. The only thing, again, that took out from there with a big infected fight, what you do with David. The scenes, everything from the deer to the cabin that they sat talking in, I mean, they could have shot it more perfect. It looks quality in comparison to the source material. And then obviously you go back to Joel, Ellie gets the medicine. It's quite, I love how Bella Ramsey pulls this scene off. She's using the needle. She clearly hasn't got a clue how to hold the needle, and she's holding it like a pencil. She doesn't know where to put it, so she just sticks it straight in wound. Again, when you play the game, this is the first time that you see Joel again since he gets injured. Apart from when you play the DLC, which very much works like the show. We cut back to the kitchen scene, and it gives another little reference to what's going on with the people. The guys making the broth with the meat. You know, you can see the camera focuses through with the meat. A lot of people seeing the show for the first time probably might not click on what's happening here. Fans of the game know straight away. The wife's talking about the meat. You clearly know that it's her husband. They have to resort to cannibalism to survive. In the game, it kind of just makes it look like they're just straight up cannibals, but you know, in the show it gives a more realistic look to the group where they're running out of food. David makes reference to that when he speaks to James. He talks in code. They haven't got much in the way of meat, and they're just eating the dead of their own people. You see the banner up on the wall where it says like he shall provide. It's ripped straight out of the game again. As you're running through the fight scene with David, you can see that banner on the wall. Then you see another sinister side to David. The young girl questions her father. Of course she wants revenge. You should need to kill them both, and he just walks up to her and slaps her in the face in front of everyone. Just shows you how he's manipulated the group. Nobody says a word. They're all frightened. Even the mother just sits there and lets it happen. But these people are starving. They've put the trust in this guy. They know that he's deep down that he's probably this sinister person, but they're quite happy to just let it ride out for their own survival. These scenes are shot in what they call Todd's Steakhouse. It's exactly like the game. They've made it look perfect, this, especially the fight scene, which we'll come to in a moment. And it comes to another big moment in the game. Ellie sees the men. She draws him away on horseback. In the TV show, you see she tries to warn Joel. She gives him the knife. But yeah, she draws him away on horseback. And in the game, that's quite a big action scene. You run through the town on the horse. There's a lot more men in the game, as you'd expect. And ultimately, the horse gets shot. And in this case, it gets shot by James, Troy Baker himself. Ellie falls down a little bit of a hill in the game. Callus, the horse, has obviously died. And you just have to make your way as Ellie through the rest of the resort. You know, you kill a few men, more gameplay action, until you get to the main part of the resort where she gets captured by David. Again, a big action scene for gameplay purposes, that they've just took that out. They shoot the horse, you know, Ellie's unconscious, and they take her from there. Clearly against these guys, David wants Ellie alive for his own personal reasons. He gives that speech to the guys saying, you know, you want vengeance, like go and find Joel. And straight away I'm thinking, oh, you know, one of the best parts of the game in this scene, which I really didn't want him to take out of the show, was the interrogation scene with Joel, and I'm really happy that they left that in. Joel starts coming around, just like the game. He comes around, there's a guy comes downstairs, Joel kills him, quite a violent scene. And then as soon as you see the other two guys, you just know that the interrogation scene's coming up from that part of the game. There's a lot of parallels in this one that I've mentioned, but this is definitely my favourite parallel to the source material, is the little interrogation scene you see from Joel, which just shows the side of him that Ellie doesn't really see that much, and this kind of things that he used to do before to survive. Remember the character that was played by Graham Greene? It was quite a funny moment at the beginning of episode 6 when Joel does the thing with the map. He says you need to mark it on the map and it better be the same as your wife's. Now, because they showed that scene in that moment of the show, I thought, oh no, you know, they're not going to show this interrogation scene because they've used that map moment right there, which doesn't happen in the game. So we're kind of worried they weren't going to use this scene, but they have anyway, and he does the thing with a map, makes his buddy do the same. It gets referenced again by Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, this technique. And yeah, I'm out of all the scenes in this section of the show, I'm really glad that they kept this one in.
Leave him alone.
You're next. Please. I don't know any girl. You should.
What girl? I don't know no girl.
He can't help you. You focus right here, or I'll pop your fucking kneecap off.
I'll pop your goddamn knee off. The girl.
She's alive. Where?
She's alive. She's David's newest pet.
Oh, the town!
What town? The town. The town. Now you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to. Mark it.
You're gonna point to where we are and where your resort is. And it better be the...
He ain't alive.
Why the fuck did you do that? He told you what you wanted.
Fuck you, man! He told you what you wanted! I ain't telling you shit!
Motherfucker, fuck you.
That's all right.
I ain't telling you shit.
I believe it.
No, wait!
No.
You know, while this scene's happening, David's got Ellie locked up in a cage and he's talking about her wanting to trust him and that. Because at this point in David's mind, he's probably thinking Joel's dead anyway. Even if he survived, he weren't going to survive his guys tracking him down. So at this point, David's in a comfortable position. He's got Ellie in a cage and he's just trying to manipulate her and garner her trust. And again, this episode, it just keeps bringing out those parallels to the game. This scene with David and Ellie it's perfect. It's a really, really good parallel. Another one I'll put up on screen.
Here. You should eat.
For what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear.
With some human helping on the side?
No.
And David's trying to manipulate her. You soon realise that David is in fact a paedophile. He wants Ellie for his own little pet. He's clearly been abusing youngsters in the past leading up to this. It starts out that you think he's a normal, nice guy, but it turns out that he's just an evil character and one of the worst ones that you see in the part 1 of The Last of Us. You see the dangerous side of Ellie, and she breaks his finger, grabs her hand, and you see Ellie, she goes, oh, like that, and it's exactly the same as Ashley Johnson portrayed it in the game version, and Bella Ramsey's just pulling these moments off absolutely perfectly.
And you're special.
Oh.
Hits her against the cage and she's all bloody, and you see that like sinister look to Ellie, and it kind of gives me that impression of what you'd think of Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, which is a really brutal story. And yeah, just a great scene. Troy Baker again gets involved as James. He actually suffers his demise at the hands of Ellie after she's talked about obviously the infection, confuses James and David to the point where she can make a getaway.
Hey, wait!
Shut up!
Orange you.
I'm infected! I'm infected! I'm infected! I'm infected! What'd you say? Everything happens for a reason, right?
What the hell is that? She would have turned by now. It can't be real.
Looks pretty fucking real to me.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
David.
No. No, she would have turned by now. This isn't real.
That looks pretty fucking real to me.
And on this scene in the getaway section, Ellie runs off when David tries to shoot her, and you have to make your way through the town as Ellie. And then in the game, you keep flicking back to playing as Ellie and Joel. You've got Ellie trying to get away, and you've got Joel trying to find her. Kind of cuts a little bit of that out, but it comes to the same point essentially. Shows you this section of Joel running through the town, just same as the game. It's quite bad visibility. You're trying to find your way around. In real life, when they were shooting this, Pedro Pascal talked about like he would having to do these scenes, but they had these big industrial-sized fans like blowing the snow to make it look like bad weather. He says he would shoot in these scenes. He says you were absolutely freezing, and I can imagine up in Alberta, Canada, in February, it can't have been the most comfortable locations to shoot in.
Yeah, so that was hard.
And again, just like the game, Joel enters this like outhouse. He finds Ellie's bag and he sees the bodies hanging up where they've been getting the food from. Just before you get to the restaurant scene with Ellie and David. Now again, as far as the TV show concerns, this scene in Todd's Steakhouse restaurant, this is a scene that they have to get right because it's a big moment in the game. Now, for you guys watching this breakdown who doesn't play video games, this section of the game, it's what you call a boss fight in a game. So you get to in the TV show, it looks exactly the same. You're trying to sneak around as Ellie. You have to fight David when the restaurant itself's on fire. It catches fire a little bit differently in the game. David grabs her and like a old gas lamp falls over it, so it starts a fire. But essentially, this is what you call a boss fight in the game, and you have to sneak up on David. You can't fight him head on. If you fight him head on or he sees you, he's just going to kill you. You have to attack him from behind like 3 or 4 times to get past this section. But they capture it beautifully in the show. It does come across exactly like it does in the game. She has to sneak up on him, and if you play this on the hardest level on the game, it's really, really difficult to do. But yeah, again, and then it flips back to Joel. And then you come to this moment that I didn't know how they were going to carry this off in the show because it's a really violent moment in the game. But again, it is ripped straight from the source material. And it just shows you how it's just absolutely damaged Ellie mentally, and she's completely in survival mode. You know, going forward in the game, you can see it's affected her. She kind of falls into herself a little bit. You're going to see that in the next episode. This is where Joel actually grabs Ellie as she's killing David. It's just a small thing they've changed. Ellie actually walks out of the building. Joel grabs her, and it's a huge moment in the story, this scene, because it's where that bond of Joel and Ellie, it's been building slowly throughout the story, but this is like the ultimate bonding moment for him. He embraces Ellie. You'll notice that he calls her baby girl. That's how he referred to his daughter, if you remember in the first episode. It's very much got to this point now where they're inseparable from each other, and it literally does see Ellie as like a surrogate daughter.
Fucking touch me!
It's me! It's me! It's me! Look! It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Joel.
It's okay.
It's me.
Yeah!
Look, it's me. It's me. It's okay. Okay. It's okay, baby girl. I got you.
For you guys who are watching this as first timers to this story, you're going to see this bond unfold in a way that you might not expect in the next episode. And it ends exactly where I expected it to. Ellie gets connected with Joel again. and the move on, and it's going to bring us into the final episode of this story.
After all we've been through, it can't be for nothing. There's no halfway with this. We finish what we started.
Another episode, they've got to get it right. It's the episode 9 and the final episode, it's actually a shorter episode. It's obvious there's going to be a lot what they shortened down, but there's going to be a lot of bonding time with Ellie and Joel in this one as well. You're going to see Ellie, she's changed a little bit because of what she's just gone through. I hope they get it right. I kind of want to see some infected in this last episode, because there is a big section with Joel and Ellie before you get to where you need to go, where you fight a lot of infected. So just to recap, guys, another great episode. I kind of just talked more about the parallels in this one. There weren't much in way of Easter eggs in this show to talk about. It just kind of runs straight from the off, followed the source material perfectly. Great casting, amazing to see Troy Baker, I thought that were excellent. Scott Shepherd played David, great. The set design were fantastic, and Bella Ramsey again in these scenes were absolutely excellent. You know, she digs deep into a lot of the emotional rage and that kind of thing, and she's been pulling it off amazingly from day one. Pedro just absolutely kills it as Joel, and as far as adaptations go, there's nothing close to this. It's absolutely perfect. I love what they've been doing with the characters. The only gripe I've got at the moment about the whole show is they've got these perfect characters cast, like Scott Shepherd as David. They've got the brothers, which were perfect. The only misstep I feel still is the Kathleen character from episodes 5 and 6. I honestly think that it was such a pointless character to bring into the show. It's just nitpicking because I'm a fanboy, obviously, but that's one character I would have just left out of this completely. The last episode's next week. It's going to be awesome to see how they pull it off. It's going to be awesome to see how it ends, definitely, because I think they're going to throw something in there that both fans of the game and the TV show aren't going to expect. It's going to be cool to see the introduction of Anna as a flashback, which is Ellie's mum, played by Ashley Johnson, again, who plays her in the games. You don't see her in the game, but you do have a letter from her mum, which is in a backpack. So you can open the backpack like an inventory with all the things you collect, and Ellie's got a letter from her mum called Anna. And it's nice that they're going to touch on that story. It's going to be a flashback. You're probably going to see Marlene again in the flashback. Also, I'm hoping they do use the infected again, because there's a big scene towards the end of the game before you get to where you need to be, and there's a lot of infected. I'm hoping they don't take it all away. You know, I understand why they're doing that in the show, because story is king when it comes to this. But you know, a little bit more infected would be nice, and I know a few fans of the show that don't know the game have kind of expected a bit more of that, so hopefully we do see some more infected in the final episode. Anyway, with that being said, guys, that was just another breakdown of The Last of Us episode 8. Just parallel after parallel that were mimicking the game beautifully. I really enjoyed the episode. I'm really hoping that they did this one right. I believe that they did. So yeah, with that being said, guys, there's one more left. I shall see you definitely for episode 9. I can't wait for the finale. So again, with that being said, I shall see you in the next one. Take care.